Hello and welcome to my review of the Glorious Model O mouse. As you can see here, the new Glorious Model O is the first mouse coming out from Glorious Master Race. It's an ambidextrous mouse with two buttons on the left side, so only for right-handed users. Having 6 buttons, 2 main buttons, the 2 side buttons, mouse wheel and the CPI button, and mainly featuring the currently best sensor available, the 3360, and sporting an incredibly low weight of 67 grams. Now the next step, looking at the boxing of the mouse. The mouse comes in this small little box featuring the main advantage of 67 grams for this mouse, showing you all the important specs, the dimensions: 61 millimeters in the front, 66 millimeters in the back, 59 millimeters where you grip it, and the length not being on here, but it's here, 128 millimeters and roughly 38 millimeters in height. Inside the box you find some stickers, some welcoming text to being a member of the PC gaming race, some merchandise, and then this little instruction leaflet telling you how to change the lighting effects on the mouse without installing software, also showing you the button layout and the possible CPI levels and what the color indicator represents on the bottom. Also the warranty, etc., and some information for additional settings when you download the software. The mouse starts out with 4 CPI settings, and the bottom indicator tells you which CPI level you're on, so you have to turn it around to do that. Weight and shape, well, we basically already went over the weight because that's the key aspect of the mouse. At 67 grams it's incredibly light. The shape is very similar to a Zowie FK1 or the Final Mouse Scream 1, or I think Tournament was the other edition name. And it's a very comfortable mouse to hold for someone who likes ambidextrous mice and on the larger side. As this mouse features the 3360, we don't have to talk too much about sensor performance. It is pretty much perfect as you would expect, so a spot-on sensor performance. I couldn't make this sensor spin out or even not register tracking at all. It has a perfect control speed of way above 6 meters. This is just one quick swipe that I did a bit below 6 meters per second, and the mouse tracked flawlessly through that. If we're looking at the CPI steps or the CPI step accuracy, I've tracked it on different CPI steps, and for all of them it was roughly below the proclaimed value. So for example, the 400 CPI step was really 391, etc., but they were all consistently about 2 to 3% below the proclaimed value, which is completely fine, I think, because that indicates that whatever the offset is, it's consistent. It's probably to do with the height tolerance of the sensor affecting the actual CPI. Now looking at build quality of the mouse, which is something that you'd consider important at a mouse that is so light, so that typically could mean it's flimsy or not as optimally designed. Of course, they've taken out a lot of weight by taking out parts of the shell and using this hexagonal shape that has been used on, I think, the Final Mouse Air 58 before. And still, the overall quality feels very nice. The clicks are great, so the main button clicks are awesome. No complaint about those, really a light tactile feeling to them. They use Omron D2FC F7N, I think, as the switches, and the mouse wheel and the side buttons use green plunger Huano switches, which are a tad bit harder to press, but not really hard, so you can still press it easily, but it has some resistance to it. Side buttons have very little play, so that's fine too. The only concern I have in terms of build quality is when you really press the sides hard. You can actuate the side button click without actually clicking the button. There's the click. But I think I can only do that when I keep the mouse like this and use a lot of pressure. This never happens when I use it regularly. So I think there's a trade-off. If you want a light mouse, you have to accept that it's a bit more fragile than a heavy brick. And I've had other mice who had the same issue if you really pressed onto them, because it's still just plastic. In terms of build quality, I also put in the mouse feet in this category, and they are just nice. Pure PTFE, very nice glide, no sharp edges, nothing catching onto your mouse pad, so that's also great. And the cable is one of the best stock cables I've seen so far, because it has a sleeve like a paracord. It's not on the same level as paracord in terms of flexibility, but close to it. I guess a paracord mod, you don't have any shielding wire in there, so a stock cable has to have shielding to be able to sell it as a retail mouse, so it can't be as flexible as a paracord mod, but it's really the closest thing to it that you can get, so I'm perfectly happy with this. Lastly, we're going to look at the software of the mouse, and to do that I can show you here. Software is very minimal. I quite like it. You can set all the buttons as you want. You can even record macros if you feel like doing that. You can have different profiles and set profile switch to the DPI button if you want to. You can set up to 6 DPI levels and also set X and Y independently if you want. I'd never recommend that, but you can do it. You can also change the color of the indicator light. So for example, regularly the first step is yellow. I changed that to red because I use red as the overall lighting color, and 400 CPI as the mouse as the CPI step that I regularly use. Looking at the lighting options, you can set all those with certain button presses. I'm not going to show that here, but I tested it and it works. You can set the lighting effects, you can set the brightness, the speed, and the color switch when they have color switch in that. So you can do all that without software pretty much. If you're happy with this mouse with 1000 Hz polling rate and the CPI steps that it comes with, everything else, so the lighting, you can set without software. I now have it set to single color. I can quickly show you how, for example, glorious mode. It's kind of what others maybe call a rainbow effect, which just cycles through all the colors. And then breathing is pretty much self-explanatory, which says this one breathes between the selected colors. You can uncheck these or check others so that you only breathe between two. Single color, of course, and then you have things like tail, which I'm not too sure. It's kind of progressing down the mouse in different colors. You have the nice rave, which is basically if you want to use a police siren as your lighting, that's what you get. Wave, something similar to the glorious mode, I think, just without the smooth transition, and of course you can turn the LED completely off. I'm going back to single color, and then we're going to look at the mouse parameter section, which allows you to increase the lift-off distance to 3 mm. Standard is 2. 3 mm is still, it's not really 3 mm. This is barely tracking at 1 CD height, and this means it's not even tracking at 1 CD lift-off distance height. So you can go to very, very minimal, basically the initially Zowie levels of lift-off distance, like you lift it just a tiny fraction and there's no tracking, to a bit higher lift-off distance. Polling rate you can set at the usual values between 125 and 1000 Hz. And then you have the debounce time feature, which is interesting because you can set the debounce time of your mouse switches. Now they're telling you, please, this is an advanced feature, please see README before editing this value. And what they tell you there is that this is used to prevent accidental double clicking, which can happen as the switch wears out. So you can set this to 4 milliseconds and just run with this. And then when you experience double clicking later on, maybe because the switch does wear out, which they will do eventually, you can reduce it to 10 milliseconds and enjoy the mouse again, because the difference really isn't that notable, at least for me. If it is for you, then you'd probably have to get a new mouse immediately after that. Well, that brings me pretty much to my conclusion. Now, I've played with this mouse for quite a bit, and I have to say I enjoy it a lot. In terms of my overall ranking of the mouse compared to all other mice out there, regardless of price, this is probably in the second spot, right behind the G Pro Wireless. The G Pro Wireless only takes the cake because it's wireless, and I really enjoy having that freedom of movement. I also enjoy the shape of the G Pro Wireless and that it has island buttons, but the G Pro Wireless is also a 150 euro retail price mouse, and this one comes at 50 euros, which is a third of the price, and it delivers pretty much identical performance, having an incredibly low weight and a really great stock cable. So in terms of bang for buck, this one is the mouse to beat now, and I think I can recommend it to everybody. I got it in the white matte version. You can also find a white glossy or a black matte or black glossy version, and the glossy versions I believe are a bit more pricey, 60 euros compared to 50 euros for this one. But if you like shiny mice, then that's something for you. In terms of grip, this one has a matte coating, but it's perfectly fine to grip, no issues, whatever. It doesn't slip, so it's not like a Death Adder Black Edition, which had sides that would just feel like soap to dry hands. This one is easy to grip, sweaty hands, dry hands, whatever. So as a conclusion with a rating, I'd have to give this one a 9.5 out of 10 at least. Well, that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of the mouse, what I can improve with these reviews. I'm trying to keep them short and concise because I have limited time, and this was already the third try for me to do this review after having to set up everything again. And yeah, let me know, and cheers.